What broke your heart completely? Story 1. Got cancer at 27. 1 year in, I discovered my husband I met when I was 14 and had 2 sons with, had a full-blown relationship with one of my best girlfriends, and that had been going on for a year. She pretended to be my close friend during the worst time of my life so that she could attend my children's birthdays, get closer to my husband, and so on. Still recovering 9 years later. Wow. I did just the opposite. My ex-wife's cancer came back and she had no one, so I spent hours each day in the hospital with her. This made my girlfriend jealous, so I dumped her. 2-year relationship. I slept on a hospital bed while my ex-wife recovered. Our divorce was mutual, and still friends today. I will say it broke my heart to lose my girlfriend, but I'm a fiercely loyal person. When I pick someone, that's it. My ex was no threat to her. No reason to be jealous. I also knew my ex for 20 years longer than I knew her. I guess it was a red flag. Story 2. Watching my granddad lose to dementia. I watched my wife pass from brain cancer and the effects were similar. Her humanity slowly melted away until she was a vegetable. Our hopes and dreams that we had worked so hard for were gone. It's been nearly 2 years and I still have problems hanging out with young families because they live the dream that was robbed from us. What broke my heart was our daughter asking to talk to mommy on the phone. One day she even walked out the door because she thought mommy was coming home and she needed to find her. We walked until she gave up and I had to explain death to a 2-year-old. 30 is too young for this. Edit. It's been 18 months since she passed. She got sick during her last trimester of pregnancy and had a C-section and brain surgery the same week during COVID restrictions. I've been doing well. I inherited some of her friends who became aunties to my daughter. Both families have been really supportive, and my in-laws still treat me like their son. My wife's assets are transferred to my name. I get child benefits and a widower's pension, and I have a great job, so I'm not struggling to make ends meet. I rebounded back pretty well. Her decline was slow, so I got to grieve by degrees and work through it with her. I also got a new job that paid 60% more than my last one and focused a lot of effort on being a good dad to show her that she didn't have to worry about us. And she never did. She hid things from me, but she never expressed to anyone that she was worried about me, just sad that she didn't get to enjoy life with us. I took mental health seriously and developed healthy coping mechanisms to manage. I also accepted it and treated it as a normal part of life. According to therapists, this is 90% of the battle, and once she was gone, I had so much caregiver fatigue that I wasn't overly sad. In fact, I was tired of being sad. Eventually, I was able to close this chapter of my life and treasure it. I still struggle with a few things. There are parts of my life that are blacked out. I sometimes get death anxiety when I go to sleep. I get very sad at children's parties because I see people living the dream that was robbed from us, but also very happy because 3.5 years of lockdown, COVID plus caregiving, make me grateful and easily pleased. For most of our marriage, we didn't have much money, but we lived within our means and stayed out of debt to buy a house. We closed on one right before she got sick. Now I have more money than I can spend and feel guilty socking away a quarter of my take-home into retirement. What little faith I had left in God vanished, and I'm quite cynical and nihilistic. There's a hole in my heart that will never be filled. The experience gave me an unshakable confidence that only people who overcome something terrible can get. The next challenge is to translate that into dating when I'm ready. And I think I am. Agree. Both my grandparents slowly drifted away from reality. When they died a few years later, I felt like I had lost them long before that. At some point, I found myself not even wanting to visit them anymore. Even though I felt awful for thinking like this because all that caused was pain. My grandma struggles with dementia right now. It was slow at first, and then suddenly she wasn't herself anymore. She was always afraid that she wouldn't die in her own home. She's still in the house she built with my grandfather, in the bed where he died, surrounded by photos of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she asks me to take her home. She recognized my son last week but asked him where his mom was when I was right there next to him. It breaks my heart that she won't be there to do the things she did for all the other kids, and he, being only 5, might not remember what a wonderful grandma she is, and how she loved us all so much. I'm losing my sister to it right now, early onset. No answers from the best docs in the country. And it is so painful, I'm not even really dealing with it. Just seeing her gradual decline in assisted living is the most helpless I've ever felt. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It has taken everything from her except for us. When/if there's a solution for it, something I donate to and hope for within my lifetime, it will be one of mankind's greatest humanitarian achievements. Yes, same here. It went from getting a little forgetful, then frustration, then worse forgetfulness, and it got to the point where they couldn't take care of themselves. Then we had to put her in assisted living after it was too much work for us and her caretaker. Then she got worse and worse until she forgot who everyone was and eventually stopped communicating. She would just stare, or sleep in the wheelchair. Eventually she couldn't get out of bed, and then she forgot how to swallow, and we just had to sit there and let her die. I'll never forget the gasping breathing noises she made in those days leading up to her death. She passed away last year at 98, but she mentally died at 90 and had to suffer 8 long years with this terrible disease. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Story 3. Figuring out you are not as important to someone that you love as you thought you would be. I learned the hard way that I am very much replaceable. Still been tough to move on from my former friend. We've known each other for almost 26 years. While I did have a thing for him in the very beginning, he did not share that feeling, but we remained friends. Took a long time for me to be okay with that and get over it, but life went on. I finally met my forever sweetie, and we've been together almost 25 years. Married for almost 14 of them, my second and my hubby's first. Meanwhile, he had gotten married himself and they had 2 boys, but eventually got a divorce. A short time later, he started dating an acquaintance. They are now engaged. A bit over a year later, the ex-wife dies. During the times he was with his ex and now, with his current lady, now fiancé, he would weird out and stop talking to me, claiming his ladies would think me being friends with him was weird, and didn't like the fact that I was liking pictures on Facebook like all our other friends normally do. Weird crap like that. Interestingly, during his times without someone to come home to, he would talk to me a lot and share all kinds of things with me that he would never share with other women he was with, things that would suddenly become weird when with a more permanent relationship. The last time it really caught me out of the blue because the girlfriend seemed to really dig all 3 of us hanging out and goofing off. I've always been like a tomboy and not very girly at all. And I was truly okay with my former friend and I being the way things were. I even supported their relationship because I loved it. It was a great improvement over his previous marriage. His deceased ex was a crazy lady with many problems. Only when I realized he suddenly started calling my behavior weird again was I figured out it was his problem. I was nothing but kind to him. We even called each other best friends. But dang how it hurt when I realized this last year. He was pretty much using me and I was so happy to have what I thought was a great friend aside from my forever sweetie hubby that I let it happen until last year. It was the toughest thing to do, to walk away, to keep trying to remind myself he will never change because he sure as hell hasn't. My apologies for rambling. I'm in the same boat, and it's been a little over 4 years. It sucks even more when your suspicions are confirmed and you just wouldn't have minded being wrong for once. It is what it is. The pain is a bit duller these days and the world goes round, even if you could have sworn that it had stopped. I even feel a little guilty sometimes when I realize I haven't thought about it in a while. Fortunately, it doesn't have to dictate your life forever, and it's okay to be bummed for a while. Hang in there. I fell in love with one of my oldest friends. We've been friends since 2014 and we've stayed in contact over the years, and this past summer we got into a relationship. I've never felt more secure or happy because when you date one of your closest friends, you don't have to play any games like you do when you're on Tinder or you meet a stranger for the first time. Everything felt right and natural. I felt like I found my person. One day in October, he decided to end things over Snapchat and ghost me for 3 weeks. I was really hurt and betrayed. I wanted to find out what I did wrong. Maybe I upset him? Finally, I get in contact with him and he tells me that he's not ready for a relationship, but he still cares about me, so I made a proposal to give each other 4 months and then come back to this relationship to see if it's something we both want. The plan was not for other people, but we were just going to be friends in hopes that we could get back together or figure out our own emotions before having a romantic relationship. He agreed to this and thought it was a great idea. Take a wild guess what happens after only a week. He slept with someone else, and now those 2 are dating. When I called him, I was rightfully mad and upset. He was high as a kite and did not understand why I was so upset. nor did he really care. He just told me that the other girl and him were better for each other. Even though he called me perfect and the best past relationship he had, he told me he wanted a life full of experiences, but God forbid. I told him I didn't want him being high at our hypothetical wedding, and I have standards for all my life other than living off of welfare simply because you can if you wanted to abuse the system. I blocked him, and I hope to never see him again as I move on with my adult life. Story 4. Knowing without a doubt the person I'm supposed to trust is shady. That bell cannot be unrung. I currently have this feeling about my dad. The man who I always trusted and who inspired me the most has changed so drastically in the last 3 to 4 years and is now a completely different person. I spend most of my days traveling due to my work, and I worry about my mom and sisters. It's like he has been abducted and replaced by a completely different person. I truly miss him and would like to have my old dad back. Says they'll be somewhere and aren't. Says they'll stay extra for work but go somewhere else. Just returns from traveling for a funeral service and disappears for an hour. Has friends they never speak to at home on the phone but constantly on text and phone with them based on phone records. Tends to always gaslight when questioned, and so much more. I had a similar situation with my first serious relationship. I dated this girl for 2 years, started when I was 19. We had our difficulties, but I thought we were happy together. Then she started acting pretty much like you described once she got a car and started going to college. Long story short, she essentially had a whole other life at her school, along with an ex who was apparently her side piece to her 2 boyfriends. Also, she was having an emotional affair with an internet stranger throughout her entire relationship. As you said, you don't unring that bell. The worst part is how she kept stringing me along as this story unraveled. Oh no, I'll change, and all that, which I foolishly believed because I actually cared. I don't think she ever realized how much she damaged my trust in others. I've been this person before and I hate doing it, but sometimes it's a little bit of self-preservation. My ex was a major control freak with out-of-control anxiety, so sometimes I'd leave work early and go out with coworkers to a bar, but I'd tell her I'm still at work. You might ask why I wouldn't just tell her the truth. Well, it's because I'd get a guilt trip and questions like, who are you going with? Who else is there? How long will you be there? And would constantly text things like, I hope you're having fun and don't drink too much, and what time are you coming home? Whereas if I didn't tell her and just came home at my normal time, no questions were asked and no guilt trip was given. Story 5. Opening up to someone, loving with all your heart, just seeing them pull away bit by bit and never knowing why. I'm going through something like this. Well, I have been for a long time. The truth is, it's not about forgiving them anymore, it's about forgiving yourself for having those feelings and emotions. It's about allowing yourself to be okay with how it all went down and to move forward. I had my heart broken by my best friend when he suddenly ghosted me. The whole relationship and friendship went just like that. It made me feel so insignificant, like I'm someone that people even close to me can just toss aside easily. I feel like I'm going to fear trusting people again for a while. I'm still sad about it despite it happening months ago. I've cried so many tears and forgiven myself for being sad, but it still hurts. I don't know how to feel okay enough to accept it happened and move on, except that some people are just like this. When I was 15 or 16, I was madly in love with this girl. We became best friends. One day she got up and ghosted me and would do everything to avoid me. I never got an answer as to why, nor any closure. I firmly believed that time would heal that wound, as it did every other wound. It didn't. I'm 30 now. I have a nice job and have been together with my girlfriend for over 10 years, and sometimes I still wake up with nightmares, and still that pain tugging at my heart. It's the only wound I never got over and never fully healed, and I've been through some of the worst crap imaginable. This has happened to me the most this year than any other time. Finally confess my feelings to someone who claims to like me back. Then immediately after, they are going through a lot. Never been sadder in my life, and some BS, and now they barely want anything to do with me. Or they suddenly found/got with someone else. They're still doing the same old crap they always do, but now I'm no longer a part of it. I'm tired of this. Started healing from a 6-year relationship and found someone a couple of years after the breakup. Everything seemed to be perfect. Same sense of humor and similar enough interests to stay at each other's house, cook dinner together on regular dates, and just genuinely enjoy each other's company each day. After 5 or 6 months, I opened up fully about my feelings towards her and was shut down immediately. I try not to hold it against her personally because she was honest, but it really opened up an old wound that hurt. It's been like 3 years, and I just focus on myself and don't really want to let anyone in emotionally. Story 6. When my husband and I got pregnant for the first time, we were beyond excited, planning the future, then went to our 10-week appointment/first ultrasound to be told there wasn't a heartbeat. Repeat ultrasound 2 weeks later showed it never had developed a neural pole, what turns into the brain/spinal column, or cardiac activity of any sort. That it had basically just stopped developing for no reason they could tell, that a miscarriage was inevitable. My husband is a very stoic man and usually doesn't show a ton of emotion. Him crying with me broke my heart. To end the comment on a better note though, that was late October/early November of last year. We got pregnant again fairly quickly and we're 33 weeks with a healthy pregnancy so far. Going through this right now, same story for us, everything seemed good until the first ultrasound at 11 weeks. No fetus. That was just under 2 weeks ago. My wife started to miscarry 2 days ago, took her to the hospital and was not released in the wee hours of the morning with a misoprostol prescription. She took it yesterday afternoon and by night was bleeding so heavily I had to rush her back to the hospital again. Writing this from the hospital now, still there I think 16 hours later. She's had 3 units of blood transfused and doing better, but waiting for docs to decide if she needs a 4th. It's just been horrific. The shock of finding out we won't be parents yet. I wept almost immediately. She held up for a day or two, waiting for the shoe to drop on the actual miscarriage. Being in and out of the hospital when it finally did come. Seeing all the blood pouring from my wife just last night. Glad to hear a positive end to your experience with this. We're looking to hold on to such hope right now. Wishing you the best with the rest of your pregnancy. Currently going through a miscarriage. I've got a hospital appointment tomorrow to get meds to help move it along. The day we found out our baby had a heartbeat was likely the same day they passed, as the doctor was insistent on IUD removal there and then. I wanted to wait. It was a miracle baby in every way. I got pregnant during my dad's cancer treatment. I have PCOS. It was our anniversary baby and we were hoping to give my family the good news at Christmas. It was the light in all of the darkness, the hope through all of the pain, and now I'm just heartbroken. I went through something similar last year. I was supposed to be close to 9 weeks. At this time I had spotting but was told it was normal. Then one day I had a spot of bright red blood when I wiped, and I went to urgent care. At urgent care, they did an ultrasound and showed just the sac and no fetal oil. Sac measured around 6 weeks. Got home and was having pink watery spotting. The day after the urgent care appointment was supposed to be my dating scan. I canceled it while crying my eyes out. I still had that OB appointment where they told me it's normal for 6 weeks and I must have gotten my dates wrong. 12 hours after that appointment, I actively miscarried. I was devastated and so angry. I had gotten pregnant in January of 2023 and miscarried in March of 2023. I eventually got pregnant again in January of 2024, had bleeding subchronic hemorrhage in March of 2024, so already reliving the trauma, but delivered my baby a few days before the due date in October. Story 7. Watching my dad one afternoon around sunset, sitting on a bench in our backyard with our new fishing rods, practicing his casting for an upcoming fishing trip my brother and I knew he wouldn't make it to. Screw cancer. My dad restored creels and was a big fly fisherman. I always said I would make it out fishing with him, but never did much. Out of the blue, I got a call that he went into cardiac arrest and was unresponsive. I flew out immediately and waited a few days while they cooled him, trying to preserve his brain. I went through his things in his apartment looking for his VA doctor's info since they had no way to get his medical records. What the fuck? I found a fishing rod and tackle box with my name on it covered in dust, filled with all the fixings. He had been waiting for me to fish with him. When I took him off of life support, I talked to him about the cabin by the river I always said I would buy for him when I could. That it was ready for him to go to, and I would meet him there with my tackle box. I'm still shredded thinking about it. That, plus his VA paperwork when assessing him for PTSD. He was asked if he was lonely. His response was that the days are long and the nights are longer. He tries to watch movies to pass the time, but still feels lonely. Multiple times the hospital workers tried to get me to leave, and I told them I wasn't going to let him be alone for the rest of his life. I didn't care if he didn't know I was there. I wasn't freaking leaving. So many regrets. Story 8. One of my kindergartners died in my arms. He had an undiagnosed heart defect. I am so incredibly sorry that you had to experience that, but I'm so incredibly grateful that you were there when his parents couldn't be. You are a true shepherd, and you helped him move from one field to another. It's not fair on the face of it all, for him or for you. I wish you lasting peace because you did an incredibly gracious thing. Story 9. I cared for my brother for 3 years, who had end-stage renal failure. He was a non-compliant patient, and I often had to be on him to eat right, take his meds, and bathe. After a while, I had to clean him up when he soiled himself, take him to the hospital several times a week, and transport him to dialysis. In the end, I had to lift him from the floor when he fell, which was often. One day, while lifting him, I heard a pop and immediately felt excruciating pain. I had developed a microfracture in him from overexertion. The next time he fell, I implored EMS to help him. I had no choice. When I visited, he begged me to bring him home, but I couldn't. It broke my heart to hear him beg to leave. He passed away 8 months after he arrived. I couldn't even speak for a week. You've been incredibly supportive and strong for your brother, and believe me, there are many others who go through similar family crises. You really should have no regrets. You've gone above and beyond your responsibilities towards your brother. I went through this with my father in 2010, for nearly 2 years going through exactly what you did. I took on as much as I could and had to deal with his dementia and reluctance to dialysis in-clinic treatments, which were understandably difficult given some of the incompetent and indifferent dialysis techs there. When my dad finally decided that was it, I couldn't argue with him as he insisted it was his decision. He stopped his treatments and passed after 5.5 weeks. You know, I felt destroyed when my long-distance girlfriend broke up with me back in 1998, but losing my dad, of course, hit so much harder. Since his passing, every day I think of him, and he's in my prayers every night. My mom and I are going through exactly this with my dad. He's got bladder cancer. He's always told us if he ever gets to where he has to be in a nursing home, trust, take him out back and shoot him. But for years he's been a non-compliant patient and has entirely allowed his physical health, the parts he had control over, like sitting in his recliner all day and losing his mobility to laziness, not doing the proper exercises after a hip replacement, etc., to decline to the point that now I am unable to care for him on my own. Mom works but is currently on FMLA, so she's able to be home if I need her. At 1 a.m. 2 weeks ago, I had to wake her up to help me get him from his chair to the portable commode we'd set up in front of it. We were unable to get him back into his chair, and he had to call EMS, who ended up having to lay him out on the floor and pick him up in a sheet. Now he's in a rehab nursing home and he's miserable, but you chose this route, my guy. It kills me that I can't take care of him at home, where he's so desperate to be. He and Mom are still so in love, and now he can't live at home with her. Story 10. When I was a child and my dad started hitting me, I realized none of the adults in my life were going to protect me. I told my mom and she wouldn't believe me. The next day I told my teacher because we had just talked about inappropriate touch the week before. She looked me in the eye and called me a liar. I stopped trusting adults completely. I was 9 years old. I feel you. You grow up real quick after this. Oh, you're so mature for your age. Your manners are so good, but why don't you talk that much? It's because these lessons were beaten into me. I have no choice but to be anything else. Although the day I became stronger than my father was bliss. Touch me one more time and I will break your jaw again, mate. My single mother was mentally and physically abusive, especially in my teen years. I never had the courage to reach out to anyone and struggled every single day until my 18th birthday when I left immediately. Always thought no one knew because I kept silent about it. Fast forward a few years and I run into one of my mom's exes at the store. The subject somehow came up and I just remember him saying he saw what my mom was doing to me and how wrong it was. It dawned on me that they knew. They all knew, and no one did anything. The abuse was bad enough, but knowing no one even tried to save me destroyed me. I wish you the best. People suck. I share a similar story but with cops. Ran away from home, was caught by cops and told them we were being abused. They didn't listen or even notify CPS. 2 years later, we were finally taken from my sad excuse of a mother. The same cop was there and I yelled at him. He was told to leave because other cops were there. CPTSD. Cops and doctors made the list because they refused to listen. I had a similar experience with the cops. I told the cops I was being physically abused by my dad and they didn't believe me. My dad once even sent me a death threat through a text message which I showed to the police, and yet they still didn't believe me. So ever since then I just stopped trusting anyone because if the cops won't help you, who will? Story 11. Made a deal with several friends to meet up on a certain future date/time/place, and one of the keys was that we couldn't talk about it again. Just had to trust that no matter what happened in the intervening years, we'd be there. I made up special personalized gifts for each person and waited in the foggy park for 2 hours later than the agreed time. Finally broke down and called one of the couples, and not only were they not coming, they had told the other people they wouldn't be able to make it, so the other couples decided not to come either. And nobody told me. Screw those guys. This happened to my dad on his birthday. He watched a cooking show and made food for hours for his friends who were supposed to show up. I was 9 at the time and I didn't understand why we were spending so much time preparing for it. In a fit of frustration at not being able to play my games, I said aloud that this whole thing was pointless because my dad's friends weren't going to show up anyway. Well, my dad waited from 7 or 8 in the morning until 7 or 8 in the evening, and not one of his friends showed up, despite being told about the event. I've never been able to let that go, and I blame myself for possibly making my dad feel even worse, especially on his birthday. Damn, I have a ritual like that with a group of 4 to 5 friends from high school who all live in different countries now. We're all in our early 30s now. Every year on December 25th at 8 p.m., we meet at a local McDonald's. Not allowed to talk about it, you just show up or you don't. I've never missed one, but I'm fully prepared for that one day I may be there on my own. Couple years it's just been 2 of us, but it's always a cozy feeling. Not the same situation at all, but I know how you must have felt. I've always been the friend who remembers things and goes out of my way to do nice things for friends as a surprise, and so on. As a guy especially, I found other men are terrible at being good friends unless somehow you see them every day. I'm that friend who tries to maintain the friendship by doing all of the talking and attempts at contact that are ignored entirely or only responded to 2 weeks later. But at some point, my feelings get hurt and I shut down. I do have a fantastic support network of friends and family thanks to my spouse, but on my side. Outside of them, I have literally only my sister and her family and 2 friends left. One is my best friend who I hardly talk to anymore unless he happens to be passing through town. The other, I've only been Facebook friends with for the past 12 years, just liking and commenting, never direct engagement. Somehow they plan and go on trips together, but it never occurs to either one to invite me along. Or if they're so intent on one trip, it never occurs to them to invite me to go with one of them. And yes, I've tried to invite them. The one friend never responds. The best friend always says the timing doesn't work for him. He wants me to go to our high school reunion, but F that. Story 12. 2 things. Losing my dad suddenly to a heart attack less than a month before my 21st birthday. I completely missed the chance to bond and develop an adult relationship with my dad. After that, I made sure I really treasured and built a strong relationship with my mother. We were already best friends, but I didn't take her for granted anymore. I'd go over for lunch or dinner 1 to 2 times a week and we'd have endless laughs, and I'd always tell her how much I loved her and appreciated her. 2 months out from my 29th birthday, my mom suddenly died. A stroke. This hit me hard. To lose my main pillar of strength in my life was an emotional blow I still haven't recovered from. Since then, I've inherited and managed to buy my own place, a wonderful advantage at 31, but inside I have never felt more hollow. If it weren't for my wonderful fiancé, I would honestly question the point in going on. She is the kindest person I know and is a big part of my motivation for continuing and excelling in life. I used to be such a completely joyful and unbridled personality, completely insulated from the harm that life can bring upon you. I miss that version of me. I'm still a good person, I still extract joy from a lot of what I do in life, but I still feel like parts of me died along with my parents. Thanks for asking this question and allowing me to put into words what I've been through. It's a special kind of hell, isn't it? To have everything you could ever want as far as stability at this stage of life when so many don't, but know that you would trade it all away in an instant just to have them back. I never ever got to know my dad. Died when I was 2. The malpractice lawsuit from his death set me up pretty well in life here once I became an adult, and yet I hate it, and myself sometimes for hating what others will kill to have. As someone who lost her mom at 23 and my dad just recently at 34, this is exactly how I've been feeling. I lost both of my folks unexpectedly as well. It's the worst feeling in the world. Like, I thought since losing my mom, when the day came my dad passed, I thought I would have been more prepared. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but I was very, very mistaken. Ever since my dad died last October, I've basically just been living in a facade where I put on a happy face, but deep down, I hurt all the time. And I just feel hollow. Thanks for watching and/or listening all the way to the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe if you haven't. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.